Hi, welcome back to A Course in Miracles. I'm Tomas Garza, and we have a really interesting idea today in the workbook that is lesson 328. I choose the second place to gain the first. Okay. I choose the second place to gain the first. Well, so what precisely are we referring to here? We're referring to the undoing of the ego. What else, right? The false, patently false sense of self that holds ourselves out as different, as separate from everyone else. And that's our playground. A playground of competition and strife and needs and interests that appear to be different from everyone else's. Now, you'll know by now from watching this video series that I use appear deliberately. Things are not as they appear. And today's idea, lesson 328 in the workbook, is another idea that Jesus uses here in A Course in Miracles to help us out, right? To help us to undo all of our false sense of self. I choose the second place to gain the first. What does that mean? I step back and let him lead. How about that? Yeah. How about I accept that God is the creator, the father, the author, so to speak. Yeah. I accept that I am still as God created me, which we all should feel very glad about. We choose the second place to gain the first. In other words, we step back and let our inner teacher lead the way. You let Jesus lead the way. If you're following A Course in Miracles, you let the Holy Spirit or Jesus or both lead the way. You let your guide or guides lead the way. If you have a human teacher, great. If you don't, no problem, right? Let your inner teacher lead the way. You of yourself can do nothing. Oh, don't worry. I'm not talking about just you. I'm talking about little me as well, the ego, small sense of self. Of myself, I can't do anything either. I mean, every time I have tried in my life to control all outcomes, that has never worked. It's always been destined to fall flat and have me get really frustrated and fall on my ass. Sometimes literally, sometimes figuratively, right? So I'm referring to all of us here. Choosing the second place is accepting that of ourselves we can do nothing, and that wisdom, that smarts lie in stepping aside and allowing our inner teacher to run the show. We do what our inner teacher says we should do. Now, to the ego, that's anathema, of course, isn't it? It's death to the ego. That's how the ego conceives of all of this, simply because it knows it's getting undone here. And expect resistance, because here in the world, we don't want to be second, do we? I mean, this idea is really important, and Jesus deliberately chooses every single word because it's important that we begin to see things differently, that we accept different ideas. And as I've said in recent videos and throughout this series, question everything we now believe, the foundations of everything we now believe. Question your reality. Question your reality. Is this real? Could this finite thing, hair that frickin' falls out, right? Turns gray. Could that be real? Is that the Son of God? By my silence, you know the answer to that question, don't you? Yeah. We are not encouraged to choose the second place. Second place in a competition means not winning. Think of the way our athletic competitions are set up for the most part, unless you have a draw like in football, but only in the regular season. If it's the playoffs, then you go to extra time and penalties, right? And our other sporting arrangements have overtime. Baseball has extra innings until someone wins, right? So everything is set up completely dualistically, right? With a winner and a loser, except for football, where you can have a draw. But even then, when there's a draw in a football match, depending on how the match played out, one side could very well feel like they've lost. Perhaps they conceded in stoppage time in the second half, so to speak, right? I'm using a football analogy here, but we're encouraged to win. We're encouraged to be the best, which is separation. There is no the best or the worst in oneness, which is the way things really, truly are. And we're quite clearly encouraged to participate in the world in a different manner. So choosing to accept that we're not the sole power here is a very important part of the undoing of the ego. In fact, it's critical, and it's something that each of us has to do. In the end, we will all do it. It's up to us, though. This is a beautiful thing, isn't it? You are in control, because it's up to us to determine how long we delay the peace of God. It's up to us to determine right now that I'm going to step aside and let my inner teacher lead. I'm going to choose love. I'm going to choose the strength of Christ. I'm going to take a relationship and allow the Holy Spirit to enter it and run the show. Give it over to your inner teacher. Give your relationships over to your inner teacher. In business, when you pick up the phone to call someone, give that conversation over to your inner teacher. I'm giving this conversation over to my inner teacher. For example, do this. And the more you remember to do it, the more you remember to make a habit of this, the vastly different your experience will be. We're promised that. And from my own experience, it's true. As we saw in a recent video, try it and see. But be really honest and try it. And so many people say, oh, I tried that. People say that about this workbook, about which you've arrived at lesson 328, so you're actually doing it. It's a good thing, right? People say this about the workbook. They say, oh, I tried that once. Didn't get much out of it. Oh, how far did you get? Lesson 2. So there's no harm in calling it like we see it, is there? Sometimes that's what we need. I can tell you from my own experience, from my own walk, there have been times where I really needed that. Because it snaps us out of our pattern, doesn't it? It snaps us out of a habitual pattern that may not serve us at all. And that we know deep down doesn't serve us, yet like a moth to a flame, like something that smells familiar from our conditioned upbringing. We return to it again and again, wishing that things would be different. Well, make a different choice. That's what any business coach would say to us. That's what a life coach would say, right? Make a different choice. As I often do, it's just so appropriate in this situation, Einstein's definition of insanity, isn't it? You may have heard that. It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Isn't that the truth? Right? And we do that all the frickin' time. If you're really honest with yourself, and again, it's a theme in this video series to be really, truly honest with yourself, because we need that on the path. We're not going to grow, we're not going to make progress in anything until we realize that we're not doing things the way they need to be done in business, yeah? In our physical health, say it's weight loss or an exercise regimen or something like that. You know, if you don't do things the way they should be done in order to make the progress that you want, then, well, we need honesty with ourselves. So it all comes back to the idea for today. Choose the second place. Humility. Ego doesn't like that. Expect resistance, but it's worth it. Choose the second place to gain the first. By letting go of our need to control, we gain everything. We're shown what to do in every circumstance, every. If you don't know, ask. You will receive an answer. The more you get into the habit of this, and it becomes not just a practice that you have to remember to do, but something that flows and becomes your experience, the more that you do that, the vastly different your experience is going to be. It's going to open up tremendously in a way that you probably have not even imagined possible yet. Does that sound good? If so, I invite you to continue on the path, to keep going, to keep forgiving, to recognize that what may seem like a momentary regression is just that, momentary. It's temporary. The path always leads to total freedom. It leads to what we all want, the peace of God. If it seems like you're not there right now, that's all right. The honesty that we need in the present moment is in awareness. It's in present moment awareness. This is why meditation's a thing in the world. This is why mindfulness practices, whatever form they may take, that's why those things are a thing. It's why Insight Timer exists. It is why Headspace exists. It's why yoga and meditation classes exist. This present moment awareness that we're in our own way is so, so important. So I invite you, please, 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 to cultivate that awareness. Take the second place to gain the first. What do you gain? The peace of God. Everything. What do you give up? Nothing. Literally. Thank you all for joining me and for your practice, and I'll see you again soon.